And then teaching expectations. This is one of the most important parts of this whole training. You want to teach how to use these areas and what behavior you expect and do not expect in those areas. So you're going to use visual supports to teach them. You're going to practice, practice, practice. So like I said about students practicing walking up to that line and stopping, maybe it's the stop sign on the door that they practice walking up to and stopping. Maybe it's just they practice getting up and checking their schedule and going to the next place. There are so many things we've talked about today that students can practice and will need to practice. How to use putting things back where they belong, that independent workstation, where to find the materials that they need for their activity. All those things are things that they will need to be taught and will need practice and will need positive reinforcement for. So one important tip for getting students these skills quickly is not only practice, but positive reinforcement. If we teach them how to do it, and then we positively reinforce when they do it, it's much more likely that they'll continue that behavior. One thing to keep in mind too is that you'll need to revisit those routines and procedures after breaks. So even if you have a 3-day weekend, you may need to come back in and kind of review some of those routines and procedures in your classroom. Definitely after like Thanksgiving, after Christmas, those long spring break, those longer breaks, our students need you to come back in, reteach those expectations, practice them a little more, get them kind of back into the swing of things. And it doesn't usually take quite as long after the breaks if you've really taught them at the beginning, but they do need some time to kind of readjust. In the pandemic, you might find yourself needing to revisit that if a student or students or the whole class is out for a quarantine. When they come back, you might spend a little more time teaching those skills again and reinforcing that. You will not regret the time that you spend teaching how to use this space that you've carefully created. So you're spending a lot of time, even today, just listening to me talk and sharing with you. And then thinking about your classroom setup and actually setting up your classroom and organizing your materials. So you're spending a lot of time to kind of create this space for your class. And you won't regret the time that you spend on that or the time that you spend teaching them how to use the space. It will pay off in the long run. Trust me when I say that putting those systems in place will give your classroom a level of structure that students need. It lets them know what's expected, how they're to behave in those spaces. And not only will students thrive with that level of structure, but so will yourself and any other staff members that you have in the classroom. All right, so when you've implemented these ideas, it's going to be important to pause, take some time to reflect, think about what's working, what isn't, where are some areas of the classroom that aren't working the way you'd hoped. Sometimes we try something and it doesn't work, and that's okay. That's a good, we've tried it. Now we can regroup and think about something else and then change. So after you've reflected on what's working and what's not, change the things you need to change. Come back to these slides if it's helpful. Remind yourself of what your goal is for classroom setup and organization, and really be intentional about those changes you make. Really think about, why am I doing this and what am I hoping to get out of it? Setting up your classroom in a way that meets your students' individual needs, creating those systems for organization that provide structure, routine, and predictability for students and staff are well worth the time it takes. And don't forget, our overall goal is to maximize learning and avoid wasted instructional time. So thinking about these things ahead of time will help you do just that.